Group support systems can be classified as a subunit or division of decision support systems. But the aim here is, instead of assisting the individual, we're now going to focus on group collaborations. Now, what is a group support system? It contains most of the elements that we typically find in a DSS system that will aid groups in making decisions. Group support systems can also be called computerized collaborative work systems. Now, if we look at the image that we had before for DSS, we will now find that it's going to follow a similar approach. So we still have our databases. Instead of just having our database management software, management system, as well as our model-based management system, we're now going to have a combined GSS system, which would still use our database as well as our model base, but it's also going to use various group support software, such as email collaboration software, sharing, etc. Now, let's continue to look at some of the characteristics of group support systems. These systems are typically designed for groups. They will allow ease of use, they will be flexible, and they will support decision making by following various approaches. For example, the Delphi approach, brainstorming, group consensus, nominal group technique, as well as multi-voting. Now, each one of these will be explained in more detail in the following set of slides. The systems will also allow anonymous input. They will try to reduce negative group behavior, which is typically where we've got individuals that takes over group participation. It will allow for parallel and unified communication, and it will also keep automatic records of all interactions and discussions that takes place through these systems. But let's go and look at the decision-making support tools that's available. The first one we're going to refer to is the Delphi approach. Now, the Delphi approach can be categorized as a structured, interactive, iterative decision-making approach where we've got input from a panel of experts. For example, we've got our group members that need to come to a conclusion. They don't have the necessary knowledge and skills. They would call in a panel of experts, and the experts would guide them in coming to a conclusion. For example, determine the risk of flooding during an El Nino period. So we would have various weather experts. They would tell us what El Nino is, what are the ideal situations for this to occur, and what are the things that we need to look out for. The next system or tool that we have is brainstorming. Now, brainstorming is typically where we allow members to offer ideas off the top of their heads, so it fosters creativity and free thinking. So we would ask people to come up with solutions which they are responsible for, that will ultimately help them in order to get to a decision to solve a particular problem. The next type that we have is group consensus. Now, with group consensus, we typically want to seek the consent of all participants. Ultimately, it might not be your first choice, but the whole group need to decide and needs to come to a conclusion. Now, examples of these might include, for example, the American jury system, where you sit in a jury and the whole jury needs to decide or come to a conclusion, or perhaps where you have a new building that should be decided upon or built, where everybody can put in their remarks, and then ultimately the group needs to decide which one will be used. The next technique is known as the nominal group technique. Now, it's based on the brainstorming technique, but this one encourages contributions from everybody. Typically what you might find is that with brainstorming, your quieter people would refrain from giving ideas, so the more dominant people would try to push their ideas for everybody to use, whereas with nominal group technique, everybody is required to contribute. So everybody should come up with a few ideas, and then these ideas would be shared. For example, if we have limited funds, what are we going to do with the funds and how can we apply that? So everybody needs to actively contribute. The last technique that we have is the multi-voting technique. Now, with the multi-voting technique, we typically go through a number of voting processes, and each time we're going to reduce the number of options. For example, we might have a list of candidates for a position, so we would ultimately start with the top 10. Then we would ask a group to go and identify the 2 best male and female ones, so we're going to eliminate some people, and then ultimately select the best candidate for each one of these categories. So a number of iterations will typically take place. Now, if we look at the hardware and the software associated with group support systems, we would find that in most cases, because people are mobile, we would have our executives and corporate managers where they typically use these smartphones and tablet computers. So you might find that there's various apps and programs that they need to access through their mobile devices. On the software side, we would find that we need to work with groupware or workgroup software. Now, this is typically software that helps you with group scheduling, communication, and management. Now, we are actually using a lot of these already in our daily lives. For example, email, Google Docs, where it allows you to work on a document, but other people can also contribute towards that document. So it makes the whole collaborative process a lot easier. Now, what are some of the typical GSS software packages that we can work with? Some of the big names include Lotus Notes, Office Communicator, CollabNet, OpenMind Teamware, as well as various other tools in the form of SharePoint, WebEx, WebOffice, Basecamp, Fuse, Xammer, TeamSpace. Now, just for interest, note that we would find that many companies nowadays do offer solutions that support group support systems. For example, Microsoft has developed what is known as a Microsoft Surface Hub, which looks like a big TV screen that allows you to write on the screen. Everything is recorded, and then multiple people can access that screen. People at different facilities or locations can have access to that screen, and the whole interactive or interaction process is actually recorded and can be shared with all participants. Now, if we talk about GSS, we also need to think about various alternatives. Now, this comes down to the location as well as the decision frequency. Now, we get different types. There's about 4 types, of which the first one is known as your decision rooms. Decision rooms are typically when we have our decision makers in the same building or geographic area, where there's face-to-face verbal interaction and they work with the communication or with the technology. Some of the other options that we have is local area decision networks, which people might be located in the same building or geographical area, and where group support decision making takes place frequently. Another option might be teleconferencing, where we got less frequent decisions, where people are actually not closely together. So we might have people in one city and some in other cities, and they still need to contribute and come to various conclusions. With wide area decision networks, we typically find that our decision frequency is high, but our members are still distant. So the main thing between these different types of systems is it's either going to be local or distant, and we need to look at whether it's a high frequency of decisions or low frequency of decisions. Now, the last system associated with decision support systems is actually known as our executive support systems. Now, executive support systems are also known as executive information systems. Now, again, these are specialized systems that will allow our senior executives within an organization to make better decisions. So the aim is for your higher level individuals in the organization. Now, similar to all the other systems, they will provide you with various characteristics and capabilities. For example, if we look at the characteristics of executive support systems, these are tailored to individual executives. They are relatively easy to work with. They provide you with drill down capabilities. They support you with external data. They can assist you with situations where there's a very high degree of uncertainty, mainly if we want to use future predictions or future-oriented type of decisions that we need to take place. And we also find that these systems are linked to various value-added processes within our organization. Now, what is the capabilities of each of these, of the executive support systems? We would find they support the overall vision of the company. They would support strategic planning, for example, looking at the long-term objectives by looking at the analysis of our current organization, looking at what is our future needs, future predictions and trends. They would support strategic organizing and staffing, supporting strategic control, and then also support crisis management. Now, this concludes the systems that we've looked at related to decision making and problem solving, incorporating management information systems, decision support systems, as well as executive and group support systems. So by yourself, try to think of examples of programmed and non-programmed decisions, when these would take place. Also try to think about the different types of problems that was identified by the Gary Morton framework, known as your structured, semi-structured and unstructured problems. And also try to find examples of decision-making approaches. When would you perhaps make use of brainstorming, group consensus, the nominal group technique, the Delphi technique, as well as multi-voting? As with all our discussions, there are some supportive sites and videos, so please take the time to go and look at these, because they will typically show you when you can use each of these systems, as well as the types of decisions that you can take place or that you can use and apply in each of these systems.